Yo siempre he pensado que los presentadores de este programa Fox tienen algún tipo de fetiche con la humillación. Pero bueno, ¿cómo explican ustedes que a estas personas les encanta invitar a demócratas a sus programas para que simplemente les hagan preguntas que no pueden responder y los humillen en público? Yo siempre he creído lo que te acabo de decir, que tienen algún tipo de fetiche o que les gusta que los humillen. Tal vez por rating, pero ahora lo acabo de confirmar. Después de que el pastor demócrata y representante de Texas, James Tellerico, humillara tan brutalmente a Will Kane en su programa en vivo que tuvieron que sacarlo del aire en ese momento. Tanto así que esta entrevista ni siquiera llegó a su fin. Y créeme que vamos a analizar esto porque sí, tenemos los videos. Así que bueno, míralo por ti mismo, por favor.
You know, you've racked up fines. I assume you're in a hotel room. I'm not sure where you are in Illinois. You know, you've got different costs racking up, including travel. How is that all being paid for?
Yeah, we brought our own Texas flag, brought my cowboy boots, so we've got a little bit of home here in Illinois. And I wish desperately that I was back in Texas with my family, with my friends, with my constituents, even with my Republican colleagues. You know, I wish they weren't trying to rig the next election with these new maps in the middle of the decade, but unfortunately they've decided to go through with this. And so we're using this legitimate constitutional tactic to stop that power grab and fight for our constituents.
Representative, let me just jump in because of the language. Just because of the language, I would love to jump in. You said rig the election. So let's just take a moment now and make sure that we're all on the same page when we choose the words that we use, just for the accuracy and edification of the audience. Did the state of Illinois rig their election when they drew their map the way they did as Sodrone, or the state of New York, or the state of Massachusetts, or the state of California? Would you describe those states as rigged elections as well?
I'm not an elected official in those states, but I've condemned those maps. I'm against gerrymandering wherever it happens. If it happens in a red state or in a blue state, it's wrong. But what's happening here is they're redistricting in the middle of the decade. So they already gerrymandered our maps in 2021. I was there. I spoke against the bill. I didn't break quorum. My colleagues and I didn't break quorum. We're breaking quorum now because they are trying to change the rules halfway through the game, and they're doing it at the request of the most powerful man in the country.
The President of the United States. No, we're going to go back to the funding. Right. I don't want you or the audience to forget that that's where we are. But just because you've used the word rigging, I appreciate that you condemned those maps, that you're against gerrymandering wherever it may be. But to be clear then, I'm hearing you think those states are rigged. The elections coming out of Illinois and Massachusetts and New York, those are rigged elections as well. You condemn those. But you differentiate Texas. I think you just said that exactly. You said, I condemn those, called Texas rigged. They're similar in that way. So I would assume that means you think they're rigged. The only difference you drew was when? Middle of the decade, middle census. Well, Gavin Newsom says he's about to do that in California, and Kathy Hochul says she's about to do that in New York. So they are guilty, in your mind, clearly, of rigging elections, clearly in California and New York.
Both of those efforts in those blue states are contingent on if Texas decides to cheat, if Texas Republicans decide to draw these maps in the middle of the decade at the request of the most powerful man in the country.
So
again,
those you rigged in response to something you call rigging. You cheat in response to something you think is cheating.
I'm trying to listen to you, and I'd love for you to try to give me a chance to speak. You know, I think that all of us should be alarmed, whether we're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, if the most powerful politician in the country, whether it's President Trump or President Obama, if they are trying to change the rules midway through the decade so they don't have to face accountability for their actions. What I would ask you is, if Republican policies are so popular, why do they have to redraw the maps before the election?
Well, my answer to that would be a reflection of political popularity is the number of offices you win and the majority that you enjoy. And right now, Representative, you are a distinct minority in the state of Texas. Your points of view are extremely in the minority. And that is a privilege of the majority. You know, you talk about the president, and the left loves to lay everything at the president's feet because he's become your boogeyman. But this has been driven by the Texas representation in the state legislature. This has been driven by the governor of the state of Texas. Again, a Republican who holds the majority and represents the majority opinion. You've done something that you say is constitutional, which I would suggest is pretty radical, leaving your office, abandoning your office, in defense of a minority point of view that has been done in several of these other states where your party has the majority. It's a little bit like taking your basketball and going home when you don't like the way it's played, but when you're winning in Illinois, you're happy to play by these rules.
Again, I've condemned all gerrymandering across the country. And in fact, when Democrats had a majority in Congress, they voted to ban gerrymandering in every state, red states and blue states. Do you know how many Republican members of Congress joined them in that effort?
Which one? I'm sorry. Which state did you just refer to?
I'm asking, do you know how many Republicans joined Democrats in the U.S. Congress to ban gerrymandering? All the Democrats voted for it. 0 Republicans voted for it. 0.
It's an odd.
So you can spare me the both sides rhetoric. It's clearly one side that is trying to rig the rules in the middle of the game. This is like 2 football teams coming out of the locker room at halftime, and the team that's ahead says they want to change the rules for the second half so they can win the game. All of us would be throwing food at the TV if that happened. We don't accept cheating in our politics. We don't accept cheating in our relationships. We shouldn't accept cheating in our elections.
I appreciate whatever you just referred to about the number of Democrat congressmen that I'm unfamiliar with who made this against Republican congressmen who opposed it. It just kind of flies in the face of reality when I look at the state of Massachusetts, where Donald Trump gets 35% of the votes, and there are 0 Republican representatives from the state of Massachusetts.
And who signed that map in Massachusetts?
And so what I'm curious about is words say one thing and actions do something else in a place like Massachusetts. So you can't refer to random words and actions to me when I see the evidence in these states. Look,
well, you just referred
in my
to
view,
Massachusetts.
Representative, you gave the ball game analogy. In my view, what has happened here is you've done something in certain states, and you don't like it when it's done in Republican states. And now you're saying you've done the same thing as us. You've done the same thing as us, and we are going to, by the way, if you do it, we're going to ratchet it up even more, in the words of Gavin Newsom.
My party has never gerrymandered in the middle of the decade at the request of the President of the United States, nor would we. The only way this is going to happen in blue states is if Texas executes this power grab. You mentioned Massachusetts. Do you know the party of the governor that signed that map into law? He was a Republican. It was a Republican governor that signed that map into law. So I just want to be clear with our facts, and I don't want to muddy the waters. All of us, whether we're Democrats, independents, or Republicans, we should stand up to politicians who don't want to face accountability at the ballot box. That's exactly what's happening here. And I asked you, if Republican policies are popular, why do they need to redraw these maps? Why can't they just run on their policies?
I'm getting wrapped on time. I'm enjoying this conversation. I want to let it go on, and I apologize.
Usar la excusa de se nos acabó el tiempo únicamente porque fue completamente humillado en público demuestra que también preparados están estos presentadores de Fox. Y lo más gracioso de esto es que al final Will Kane comenzó a hablar de burritos para el desayuno. Es como que si aún continuara la entrevista y él dijo, bueno, antes de terminar, déjenme hablarles sobre los burritos en el desayuno, porque en Texas estos son geniales. Y luego le dijo, bueno, ahora necesito que te vayas. Únicamente quería terminar su argumento. Pero bueno, terminó antes de tiempo porque no supo cómo responder preguntas reales, no supo qué hacer ante alguien tan preparado y que decía cosas reales. Los republicanos MAGA son incapaces de resistir un escrutinio intelectual. Ellos viven en esta burbuja que creen que estos argumentos que ellos tienen son completamente normales. De hecho, MAGA siempre dice, nosotros hacemos argumentos de sentido común porque somos el partido del sentido común. Pero lo que realmente tratan de decir es que son argumentos emocionales sacados de observaciones personales. Literalmente son argumentos de sus anécdotas. Y eso es lo que ellos consideran sentido común cuando se enfrentan a estadísticas reales. Este tipo de personas ni siquiera pueden argumentar, no pueden decir nada. Este tipo de personas no tienen cómo argumentar, no son intelectualmente activos, simplemente se desmoronan cuando le hacen preguntas muy fuertes. Y no solo fue Will Kane quien sufrió esto, sino que también Dean Cain. Él es un ex actor convertido en conservador. Ni siquiera quiero decir que él es un oportunista porque sería demasiado amable con él. Es más, él fue destruido en un debate con Tim Miller, que de hecho me encantaría que veas.
You said on Fox that you'd be that you would, if they sent you in, you'd be happy to jump out of a truck and go apprehend people. So if you show up at the door of someone's home as an ICE agent, which you're an ICE agent now, do you know what rights they have?
I'm not an ICE agent yet.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so you are an untrained former actor. You are an untrained former actor.
I am a former actor. I'm a former professional football player too. So when I run down my resume, I mean, so it's stupid.
I'm just telling a fact.
Yeah,
you're an untrained actor.
You denigrate it as though it's something negative. You denigrate it like it's something negative. Like you know what you're saying. So quit trying to gloss over it. It's ridiculous. It was snarky and it was stupid.
I'm telling you why it's negative because you don't know the job. You don't know the job. That's why it's negative. It's nothing.
You don't know that I don't know the job. You're just assuming. You didn't. Did you know I was a law enforcement officer?
I just asked you. Do you know what migrants' rights are? If you show up to someone's house as an ICE agent, do you know what rights they have? Do you know?
They have all the due process rights of anybody in this country.
Okay. So do you need a warrant signed by a judge to apprehend somebody?
This is ridiculous. I'm not a sworn ICE agent yet.
You were saying you were happy to jump out of vans and start apprehending people. You were bragging about that.
I will. And then you made it, of course. And I would if that's what the director asked me to do.
they're being doxxed left, right, and center on social media and having their live friends.
No,
of course they are.
No. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. For starters, we have evidence ICE agents aren't being trained. It is. Really quick. Let's go back to George Redis. He arrived at work. He was a U.S. citizen. ICE agents surrounded his car. He identified himself as a U.S. citizen. They broke his window, pepper sprayed him, and dragged him out. He was in detention for 3 days. So we do have evidence that they're not being trained to respect people's rights. And on the masks, this is crazy. Do you know how many judges have been threatened? You know, if you're a judge and you have there's a case that is happening, you're a prosecutor, and you're targeting a murder suspect. These guys have been threatened. There have been judges whose families have been threatened. Their lives have been threatened. There are a lot of people in public life who have been threatened. You still don't get to wear a mask and be a secret judge. Not in a free country. You don't. I'm sure you get threatened. I'm sorry. If you're an agent of the government, if you're a representative of the people, you need to show your face and name yourself. Yo
creo que si tú eres conservador y te apellidas Kane, simplemente no puedes debatir, como que lo llevas en la sangre. Una vez más, estos tipos no pueden resistir ningún tipo de escrutinio intelectual. Simplemente se desmoronan, no tienen argumentos, no tienen respuestas que tengan concordancia. Únicamente están armados con una opinión muy mezquina y se enfocan solo en cómo ganar ellos. Pero bueno, este es el final del video. De corazón, si lo entendiste, te gustó y consideras que alguien más puede beneficiarse de esto, ayúdame compartiendo el video. Y como siempre te digo, cualquier cosa que quieras corregir o mejorar de estos videos, me encantaría que lo pongas en los comentarios. Y antes de que comentes que te gustaría que ponga una IA que traduzca estos videos a español, te quiero dar una breve explicación de por qué no lo he hecho y probablemente por qué no lo haga. Primero, porque es muy costoso, ya que yo subo 7 videos al día para tratar de informarte en todo lo que puedo. Me saldría muy, pero muy costoso traducir 7 videos diarios. De lunes a lunes. Segundo, es un proceso muy tardado. Hoy mi equipo de trabajo trabajamos entre 10 a 12 horas diarias para tener toda la información lista y preparada para tenértela al día. Así que imagínate si a esto tenemos que aumentarle, traducir a español estos videos, se nos haría imposible el tiempo. Ya ni siquiera es la mano de obra, es el tiempo. Así que por favor, te agradecería que este tema lo entiendas. Y yo he tratado, pero no se puede. Nada más que decir, te quiero agradecer por ver todo el video. Y te quiero recordar que si te gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, te gusta saber lo que está pasando día a día, en Estados Unidos obviamente, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.